Great. A few more people coming in. Wonderful. So welcome. Good morning. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. And if you've enjoyed your session so far. We have Gavin Griffiths in this session. It's going to be giving us lots of information about the possibilities within diabetes. A few housekeeping notes. Please change your name to the format that's on the email, and feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat as well. We'll be keeping an eye on that. Gavin is going to be talking to us, and if you have any questions throughout, please do pop them on the question, click the question button and we'll put them to Gavin at the end of the session. And feel free to chat throughout as well. Do want to thank our sponsors, and do encourage you to visit the virtual booths in between in the breakout sessions, please. Insulet has the last one at 12:30, so if you can go and take a look at that, that would be fantastic. Okay, so over to Gavin, who is an absolute inspiration. I know my son Hugo has loved seeing his talks before, and definitely if anyone's saying I've got diabetes, I can't do it, Gavin is the man to tell you that you can. So I'm going to pass over to Gavin now.
Thank you. And yeah, good morning everybody. Nice to join you today at the conference. And I know it's a bit weird being all virtual as opposed to the face-to-face, but I'm sure we're all used to it by now. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll see my slides here. And yeah, I wanted to kind of introduce myself to begin with, not with that big there, but I guess that picture is a little bit better than the Friends for Life one that you see on the program. Someone took that off my Facebook about 5 years ago, and I'm like, you know, my photoshopped in there. But there you go. There I am running around. I do run occasionally, and I used to not run anything professionally speaking, but it's always been for diabetes. So that's kind of the heart of what I want to start with, how I felt after being diagnosed. So actually everything I might have done that is kind of in a short list of honors there is irrelevant. What's relevant is living with type 1 diabetes since January 2000. And that's been the encouragement as well as the challenge for me to actually go on and perhaps achieve more things in my life. Diathlete is now a charity as well, which I'm pleased to share about. It's now a charity in the UK with a global program called the League of Diathletes. And we believe that diabetes education needs to connect better with people. And my personal view is, when I was young, I saw diabetes as an enemy. I think nobody's going to say, welcome to my life, diabetes, and be too happy about it. And certainly not family members either. But I didn't get off to a good start with this condition. And I saw it as an enemy, as I've quoted up there. But today I don't see it as an enemy. I see it more as a competitor. You have to respect your competition if you want to be a true champion and compete with it. So there's a little bit about Diathlete. We registered officially this year, but actually started out as a blog that I was doing a number of years back. I started my first marathon in 2008. And back then, even though it's fairly recent history, diabetes and exercise was not much discussed. And since then, we've got a global program. I'm going to share a little bit about actually how type 1 diabetes is around the world, and how there are similarities, but there's also a big gulf of differences in terms of healthcare and accessibility in the world. And it should not be happening in the 21st century. But yeah, we've got a program of 33 diabetes organizations who are all local level, founded by people with diabetes or family members connected to diabetes across local regions. And so we share it in common to try and make diabetes education connect better with people all around. Educate, encourage, empower is the kind of method we take. And we also in the UK, we partner with NHS diabetes teams to put on workshops and community events and even diabetes camps now. So we've been doing that virtually this year. In the past, it was actually more face-to-face and more fun. And some of these sessions with some of your young ones, children with diabetes and T1 today more so, we've been doing as well. So here's my story. I was 8 years old when I was diagnosed with diabetes, and I had no clue what that even meant, to be honest. My first question, which is highlighted there, was, can I still play football? Can I still play sports? And I didn't get any positive answers. I didn't get a no, but I didn't get a yes, you can. I got or there's a risk here and there's a risk there, and all this scientific talk that made no sense to me as an 8-year-old boy whatsoever. And so obviously hearing that, being in the atmosphere of a hospital anyway, is very negative and off-putting to actually then go and take on responsibility. And to be honest, any child is too young for the responsibilities of a condition like type 1 diabetes. No one's really prepared for that at any age, especially during childhood years, which then puts a lot of strain on the parents, which I imagine if you're listening here, most people might well be parents in the room. So it does create a bit of a conflict and a fear factor. And that's why I said at the beginning, I believe that diabetes education needs to have a new approach, a more connected approach to your personal life, to understand all this doctor talk, to actually put it into process, into living with it and working with it every day. And that doesn't happen too easily. And that has psychological challenges as much as physical ones as well, which I found out about when I returned to school. You know, I had those typical symptoms in 1999, needing the toilet, needing to drink water every 5 minutes. And being Christmas time, it was impossible to get a doctor's GP appointment. So I had to wait until the new year. And my symptoms were only getting worse and worse. So it was a very late diagnosis that I received. And obviously a bad start from there, with a lack of encouragement to actually say, yeah, you can play football. Just a simple thing like that. You can play football when this is how, instead of, well, there's a risk here, there's a risk there, this could happen, this is a worst case of a hypo, putting you off really for good. I did find my feet eventually with this condition, but school was probably the toughest, I would say, one of the toughest times of my life with this condition. I was on mixed insulin at the time, so I had 2 injections at a day, which shows you how much it's changed in a relatively short space of time. But yeah, I was having 2 syringe injections of mixed insulin, pre-mixed insulin, and I was testing my blood sugars 4 times a day. When I woke up, breakfast, lunch, dinner / before bed. We had enough for 4 tests a day back then. So a lot has changed since then, but a lot still needs to change if I'm honest. So my life was always football. I was a big Crystal Palace fan, regretfully for probably many people listening, but they're useless, but I support them anyway. But for me, my life, as I say, was football. And about a year later, I actually started to play for a local football team. And that gave me confidence because I was doing something that wasn't so much related to diabetes. When it was in school, it was always to talk about the risks. It was always a fear factor. The teachers were not educated in what diabetes was exactly. So I didn't like the environment of being in school and feeling different from my schoolmates. I think in football, it was different because diabetes wasn't a focus, even though there probably was more chances of a high or a low blood sugar in training or on match days compared to during my school days. The coach was talking about football. It wasn't separating me from everybody else, having me leave the room if there was a low blood sugar or anything like that. I was part of a team. And I think being a part of a team really made me feel more confident in myself. And that confidence eventually resonated into my diabetes management. But in school, however, I was facing really a separation of myself, becoming more and more shy. I didn't want to stick my hand up and ask to go to the toilet. I didn't want to, be excused if I was high, that was, or if I was low even, I didn't really want that attention. That was always there with diabetes, that fear factor. And it did lead to my behavior being a bit different. As you can imagine, mixed insulin as well. My levels after I had a meal would stay high for a couple of hours before coming down at a certain time. If I did activity and exercise, I actually came down pretty quickly if it was a PE lesson or anything like that. So there wasn't much information about how to manage your condition. And that made my behavior a bit different in school as well. And then I got more and more shy about just sharing about this condition to anybody. And then names started to be called when I had lows and I was shaking and shivering and things like that. I remember one time my Lucozade bottle was kicked away whilst I was having a bad low, and I got into a fight as a result of that. And that was a tougher point of my life to be picked on as well in some ways, because I was different and made to feel different, when the truth is you're not different. You can just work with this condition. And if you're able to do that with the right understanding, with the right positive mentality to accept this condition, it's not going to be a problem. But the more you go into the other way, the worse it gets. And that's the kind of path I found myself on. But I think football was a big part for me to actually get out of that. And when I was a teenager, I started playing for Dartford FC. So it wasn't the heights of Real Madrid or big teams like Crystal Palace. But Dartford FC, it was a fair achievement for me to go from a D League Sunday League team to actually playing in a semi-pro standard as I got older. So diabetes, there's an example already, didn't have to stop me. I just had to be more mindful about what was going on. And I'd actually find my levels went high during game days and came down hours later. So there's a few things that I could give you tips on, and that is monitor your blood sugar levels. Absolutely. Don't look to carb up before a game, because actually the adrenaline, the type of movement, more so, you sprint, then you jog, then you walk, then you sprint again. That changes the heart rate. And if the heart rate's pumping, it's likely actually your liver can react and release stored glucose into the blood. So there's a good chance of a high during a game and then a low afterwards. So the second tip to prevent that low from crashing so badly hours later, even in the night, is to have a good solid warm down after a game and take the stress out of the muscles. And that is also a good way of actually more bringing you down a little bit sooner, rather than a low crash and then a repeat crash in the night. And if you get a good solid warm down, a good meal with less rapid insulin as well to follow, even though your levels might be high after the game, this is the best strategy I found with football and sports like it. But I eventually become a distance runner, which I never even imagined. I always saw the London Marathon going on during my youth years. I always looked at the London Marathon as an exciting event, but I never really had a passion for running as a child. It was always football. But then when I got to about 16, 17, I started to think about diabetes a little bit differently. And that was good, because I'd got onto a more responsible path. I'd also found a big challenge in my life coming up, and that was changing treatment, changing from child care team to adult care team, and also going from premixed insulin to bolus and basal insulin. And while this might not be so much a challenge for you personally today, I think there is a challenge for many people when it comes to going from injections or multiple daily injections to pump therapy, or even changing the pump therapy to into a system. You have to psychologically adapt as well as understand the new treatment that you're taking. And at that time, I wasn't psychologically ready, and more so, I wasn't educated the way I should have been. I wasn't taught how to carb count. And so I had big challenges in my adolescent years to actually work with my condition, because I was told to inject 14 units of rapid insulin for every dinner meal. So on an average, if we're going 1 to 10, that's 140 grams of carbs for the average person that I needed to consume at every dinner meal. Otherwise, I'd go low. So as you can imagine, I had a lot of lows. I had 6 units every breakfast and lunch as well. So again, without carb counting, I could have had a salad. I could have had a pizza. It made no difference. I would have injected the same amount, because the information wasn't provided to me at the time. And my concern, even in the UK, is that still sometimes the case today. Set doses still happen here in the 21st century, in the present day. And that we need to educate the educators sometimes all round. So that caused me some issues. But running was it was a new direction in my life, and it was all for diabetes. I got motivated in a school trip when a young boy was in Gilwell Park, and I was in sixth form, and the boy was in year 7, and the teacher came and got me and said he's having a hypo, he's actually got type 1 diabetes. And so I had to take responsibility for him, and perhaps really for the first time for somebody else. And he was just crying and telling me how much he hated diabetes. And I kind of recognized myself in the boy when I saw him going through that, and tried to encourage him at the time, but I didn't have the experience perhaps that I do now to have directed him. But that kind of motivated me to do something. And then a few months later, I said, I'm going to run a marathon. But I was too young. I was 17, so I couldn't register for the London Marathon. Not that you can get registered anyway, just like that. And so I made my own marathon, the Coast to Thanet, which is 29 miles. And when I said I was going to run that, everybody said, you can't do that. You've got diabetes. It's going to cause you all kinds of problems. And it was like being diagnosed all over again. But then I knew I was going to do well. I trained. And I was actually targeting to beat 4 hours. And I knew I would do that pretty easily, because I was training so much and timing myself. And I actually ended up nearly beating 3 hours. I did it in 3 hours and 1 minute, which was gutting really. When I crossed the finish line, my first reaction, everyone was like, wow, you just did it in 3 hours. And I was like, and 1 minute, I could have beat 3 hours. but it was a big achievement for me personally, because it was something that gave me confidence. And all I was doing was loading up on carbs as I went. I had no clue about the science behind it. But you can see perhaps the picture in the center there. A reality check also happened in my life. And that reality check was a bad low when I tried to tackle the Isle of Wight a year later in 2009. 67 miles, many more hills. I needed more substantial carbohydrates. I also needed to adjust my background insulin, my basal insulin, for a challenge that was for such a long period. And I had no experience in that. So I had to learn the hard way. And I did suffer a very bad hypo, as well as 2 torn ankle ligaments that I already had. So I didn't complete my 67 miles. But a year later, that's the far left picture. I came back and I did it, and I got there. And I learned from actually what went wrong. And I think that's a good lesson for us is, these highs, these lows, the worst experiences, DKA, anything like that is scary. And it can be off-putting as well when they happen. It can throw you off your confidence. But actually, when you reflect back on them, they're key lessons to actually think, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And what can I do differently next time? And that's really how I learned along the years, adjusting to new treatments as well, new insulins and stuff as well. It was even more important. But those lows were happening a lot. I had a really bad one in that experience, but a year later I came back and I ran 67 miles without having a single hypo. So I learned from what happened, and I completed the challenge. And then that's London 2012 at the bottom there. And I've kind of also tried to highlight, so there's obviously a big difference between multiple daily injections, where I'm probably considering more carbs per hour in my body. On pump therapy, I'm probably thinking, actually, what's the best time to suspend my basal insulin, because you've got the advantage to do that as I run, and then obviously afterwards put it back on again, or even lower the basal rate and not suspend it completely, depending on how you're running and what time you're running. If you're out all day, like some of the challenges I've done, you're going to still want a bit of insulin in your system. So you consider the little things, and you see what works and what doesn't quite work, and you make those adaptations, whether it is on MDI, multiple daily injections, or whether it's on a pump. And so, some of the big adventures that I'm probably more interested in terms of what I've done. For me, what's more interesting was the past bit. Learning was the more interesting part. But these are the big crazy things. So on the left, those 2 pictures where we're in square boxes, that's Land's End to John O'Groats, or John O'Groats to Land's End, I should say. 30-mile marathons every day for 30 days in 2013. Again, everybody said you're crazy, you can't do it. And actually, I got a lot of criticism for trying to just do it, and I didn't get any sponsorship or any support. So I felt quite down about it going into it. But it was actually the biggest positive in my life of diabetes in some ways, in that I met community. And I think there's a big power in just speaking to other people, meeting other people. So before that, I was trying to raise for a couple of charities in diabetes. I was trying to get support on board, and I couldn't get it. And I was called foolhardy for trying it on and told that I'm going to harm my body and then going to harm the reputation and cause in general. So I couldn't get the support. So I had a budget of about £900 that I'd fundraised myself. And I went out for a month and I wrote letters to local guest houses and said what I was doing. And some of them let me stay for free. Some of them knocked it down to about 20 quid. And each route of the 30 routes, a new community got involved. Somebody with diabetes, a family member, came and drove the whole route that I'd Googled up, printed off like a pirate's map, and ran. And every 5 miles I stopped, because I was on finger pricks then, stopped and tested my levels, saw what was going on. I didn't know what the level was doing. It could have been 6.5, but was it going up? Was it going down? That's what I had to guess more or less whilst I was running. So there was big challenges in doing so. But I was so on the ball, concentrating on my diabetes. In any of these challenges that I've done, the big major ones, I've probably had better control than I do now, because I'm not concentrating as much in my daily life as I am when I'm out doing crazy month-long endurance challenges. So in this case, I was focusing a lot. I had 8 hypos in total during the 30-30 challenge. Now, I've had weeks where I've had 8 hypos in a week. So again, that shows you concentration on levels was different there. And I was finger pricking and running the marathon every day, which was crazy. But kids got involved. I took my Olympic torch with me, and they carried it as part of the challenges at the start or at the finish or during legs at their schools and things like that, where I stopped off. And the route just zigzagged to local communities where people responded to getting involved. And yeah, lots of people came, ran with me, cycled with me. and supported. And that really, I was in pieces. Don't get me wrong. I make it sound easy, but to run a marathon is not easy. Get up again and go again is even harder. And it got to a point in Scotland where I was in bits. I couldn't move. And this was, I still had to cross the border, get into England. There was a bit chinking into Wales, and then, get eventually to Land's End. So I was thinking, with 3 weeks left to go, how am I going to survive? But I got through it. And that showed me that anything is possible if you work closely with this. It's easier said than done, but don't give up. Keep pushing on. Learn from the mistakes, and they're not even mistakes; they're lessons, in my opinion. And you'll grow. And meeting other people inspired me even more. And then you can see in the background there, there's a few things to the side. So in the far right, New York City, you can see I took on running around Long Island, and I got introduced to CGM for the first time. Dexcom got involved. That was a G4. What a difference that makes to actually just see what your levels are doing, instead of guessing really with finger pricks as I was. So I actually got around Long Island 7 marathons in 7 days without a single hypo until the last day, when I went in autopilot mode and shot in a high dose of basal Levemir insulin that I shouldn't have done. I was reducing it all the time. And then I went into autopilot mode in the morning, shot in a big dose of insulin. I knew I was in trouble. And my blood sugars went low twice on the last day, but I still made it. And by knowing my levels, even more so with CGM, I was able to do that. The cyclist at the top, that was a cycle challenge. I hate cycling. I'm not a cyclist. I'm a runner at the best of times, but I got offered the opportunity to go for a ride with this M Health Grand Tour, where they were doing some research. And so on sports and exercise with diabetes. So we got attached to a CGM again. This time it was a G5, and there was 11 people in that group, I think, with type 1 diabetes, that went from Brussels to Paris, then zigzagging down France over the Alps, eventually to Geneva, a lot of the Tour de France routes. So I got through that one. These guys, some of them were like Team Novo Nordisk people, so they could ride a bike. I had a 100-pound bike I'd stole off a friend down the road, who I did give back, I think, eventually, but it was like a 100-pound value road bike. So I was really struggling, and I don't know how to cycle anyway, really. So for these guys, maybe 6, 7, 8 hours, they were getting the routes done. They were sometimes 120, 30 odd kilometers in a day. For me, it was probably more 10, 11, 12 hours being out there, but it wasn't about the timing. It's the same with marathon running. It's about going the distance, and there's not a greater feeling than, you don't have a great feeling whilst doing it, but at the end, there's not a greater feeling than pushing yourself and getting there. And that's also sometimes when I feel low about diabetes, when the burnout comes, that's a mental way of getting over it. It's not a greater feeling than seeing an achievement, whether it's the HbA1c's gone down a little bit than before, that you've pushed yourself to get there, and you should reward yourself for that. And I think eventually I got there with the Alps as well. So could do it on a bike. And then more recently, 2018, I decided to come back because I was fundraising for something more important, which was starting this global program that I mentioned with Diathlete, the League of Diathletes, where we've got a local community of organizations and advocates with type 1 diabetes around the world in many diverse areas as well. And so I wanted to fundraise for that. And so I came back. I was 25 marathons short of doing 100. So I thought, well, let's do 25 in a month, slacking a little bit from 2013, and make a campaign of it. So we did. Same concept really, but it circulated around the UK and Ireland with different routes, got the local community involved. And we got there. It was on BBC News and everything like that. So I got on the red sofa. That again, adrenaline, nerves, my levels soared up to 16. I could hear him beeping away in the background whilst I was on the interview. There's lots of things that can change your levels at any point. But yeah, the big achievement I want to talk about there is highlighted in the middle with Joss, who someone with thyroid, someone who had a fear of hypoglycemia. She when she was young made a friend in hospital diagnosed at the same time, and then something happened and her friend did pass away. And from that moment, from a young age, she actually always kept her levels above 10 minimals out of fear of hypos. And then she turned around, I met her at an event I did in Newcastle, and she said she wanted to run a marathon. So I was like, well, come and do it, and try to talk her into it, and we'll talk her through it. And she was determined she was going to do it. And it took us about 5 hours to do the first half marathon. bear in mind I had to finish and then get to the next location as well, which is also tiring. And the levels were very high. So I think again through that nerves, that I think with breakfast, I don't think she put the insulin in. I don't know, but understandable, of course. And so those levels were staying high. And at lunch, we had to stop. I said, look, we're either going to stop here and you're going to say you did half, which, you know, she had done, or we're going to fix those levels. We're going to give it a bit of time, get the insulin in, and then we'll go for the second half. And she was determined. And she did. She went from 5-hour first half marathon to, I think, just under 3 hours in the second half marathon, having her levels in range, perhaps for the first time in years. And obviously we have to be mindful of that. She might get hypo symptoms at a higher level. So she did it, and you can see what it meant to her. She stayed in range for the entire second half as well. And the running was much better as a result. And that's also what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to start high and go low or whatever. I'm starting in range, and I'm trying to keep in range as I run. Much easier to do on technology than it is on MDI and finger pricking, but it's still possible as well. And before I go into this next slide, I'm going to warn you as well that this is particularly for you as parents. It's not something I want to put fear into you, because, as I say, I've done all this. I've been able to live a full, healthy life. I've traveled the world, even 6 continents. I've done challenges in each continent, and I'm able to run from John O'Groats to Land's End. And that's by keeping an eye on the level. And I think in the UK, we have at least access to what we need compared to many other parts of the world. So it is possible. Your child is going to live a full, healthy and happy life. They will. You just need to encourage them. And with that encouragement comes confidence, like it was for me on the football field. That's where the confidence came from. It had nothing to do with diabetes in the end. And that's where I got to. But I'm going to warn you here, the next slide is going to, I hope, open some eyes, because I'm going to share about around the world. That bottom corner, that photograph is in America. But I was fundraising for Marjorie's Fund, a good charity, and they were supporting a friend of mine who I'd made in the Gambia called Lamin. Lamin was doing great projects to support people. He managed to get a HbA1c over there, tester for people to get their levels checked. They weren't able to do that before. He was really working with his organization, Dr. Gay, over there, who you know, they were doing incredible work. Lamin passed away this year. He's only 1 or 2 years older than me. And so I'm sad about that, and it shouldn't happen. But it does happen in the world. So you don't have to take a picture or anything of the next, you know, I don't want that, but I do want to share about the situation. So that's Lamin on the top left, and you can see he's taken someone's HbA1c's level in Gambia. So there's a few things I wanted to point out here. Shakira on the bottom left, she's alive. She's I would like to say she's doing okay, but she's not. She's in Scotland. So it's not just in low income countries that diabetes can be a challenge or a problem. It's the approach to education that can lack. And I think Shakira openly says about that. She wrote a blog a few years ago. If you go to diathlete.org, you'll find her blog. She's got gastroparesis, and she got it at the age of 23. She's 26 now, and that should not be happening. And the reason that is happening is not because of the treatment as such, but it's because of the approach to education in the first place. At that age, she was pregnant at 17 when she got diagnosed, and you know, she's a wonderful girl, good character, and she's had to keep herself mentally strong every day to try and, you know, to be fed through a tube with gastroparesis, a complication. And yes, she'd admit that she let her control get away from her a little bit, but she wasn't helped from the age of 17 as well, being diagnosed, being a mum as well, other things on your mind, with that responsibility thrown upon her. So, I mean, she's written a blog, so you can read that in Diathlete about that. It was a little while ago she wrote it. And, you know, that complication doesn't get any easier. So that happens in the world today. And that happens in the UK even. But again, going further afield as well, in lower income countries and in many other countries, in fact, there are different obstacles we face, and we can change this from our experiences together, I do believe. Bottom right, I found this in my Instagram the other day. Someone posted this on the League of Diathletes Instagram, and they're just spamming this all the time, and you know, talking about herbal medicine. Now, maybe for you and I, we're looking at thinking baloney, you know, we're not going to talk about herbal medicine, we're going to take insulin. But that's Reg enough, my friend on the top right from India, and he's not with us either. He died at the age of 29, and he was told to come off of insulin and go herbal in in southern India, and yeah, he's not with us either. And that's what happens when you got people spamming things like that on social media and putting out the false messages about this condition. So I reported it to Instagram. Instagram said it's not a threat, but I beg to differ. And in the middle, this is Ebenezer done an incredible job. He's in Ghana. So we just had a League of Diathletes global training, and Ebenezer is starting a project. So we're doing this in the UK and Ghana, in fact. And Ebenezer is 20 years old, and he's just been part of this training. He's part of a group over there called Diabetes Youth Care, one of the allies in our global network. And so he's tested this out himself. This we're doing a questionnaire to get some data to share, to open eyes and hopefully try and make a difference. But this is what he gets. Just an example, once a day. So imagine testing your blood sugar once a day at the age of 20 to manage your blood sugar. When you wake up in the morning, so you can see when he tests, he gets one test a day, and it's when he wakes up in the morning. The rest of the day, I talk about guesswork when I was running marathons. You talk about guesswork for the whole day just with one blood sugar test. You could be 4.2 and going down at that moment, but that's your one test done a day. He doesn't get that provided from his government. He gets that provided by Diabetes Youth Care. They're funding it for him. So if they weren't doing that, he'd get nothing. He has to pay out of his own pocket to try and afford this. And in countries such as Ghana, it's not so easy to get that kind of money. So, he's 20 years old, trying to find his way as an adolescent. And so we're doing a research project to try and highlight that this is not just one person's case. This is many cases across the country. I already know this. I've been there a couple of times and met some fantastic people who are making a big difference with the minimum things they've got. So, I think it's important to highlight that. And in the UK, I'm doing something similar as well. I'm going to be doing a review because it's a different challenge, but it's still a challenge. And the challenge here is, as shown by COVID, in my opinion, is that we don't have a unified approach to healthcare. One hospital is got people on mixed doses, or set doses, sorry. One hospital's doing that. And down the road in London, you've got, your big hospitals like UCLH with everybody on a pump and a CGM. So it's so disjointed around the UK. It's a postcode lottery, and that should not be the case. So I'm doing research to highlight that as well. But yeah, again, in Ghana as well, it's a different situation. But you can see just from that alone, that one little slide of many more questions that we've got, you can see, imagine that in your life, testing your blood sugar once a day when you wake up, and then hoping for the rest of the day, every meal that comes, you're okay. 2 shots of insulin, by the way, 2 shots of mixed insulin, as I was 20 odd years ago when I was diagnosed. And then going back to Lamin, top left there, as I say, he's not with us anymore, but and he's not the only person that I know that has passed on. And but I wanted to highlight him because he's also a good friend of mine, and he was doing incredible work. And so for that to happen, there's a lot wrong. And so I just wanted to highlight that. But I'll come back to positives as well. But this is the truth as well. Diabetes is a condition. If you're A, lucky enough to have the accessibility, and B, of course, helped enough to be educated, but in an approach that's right, that settles with you, connects with you, to actually say, right, I can take this on myself. It's a condition for me. But for other people, it's actually a disease as well, because this is what happens, and it shouldn't be happening. We need to unify in this cause all around the world, and that starts in the UK as well. So T1D around the globe and the League of Diathletes. So we just pulled off a virtual training, and it was different because in the past we've done the training face to face. The League of Diathletes, it's a global program of Diathlete as a charity. And it's something that just came out of nothing, really. I'll be honest, I was part of the International Diabetes Federation's Young Leaders in Diabetes program. And I'm very honored to have been in that and met people like Lamin through that. But what I noticed in the big organizations, and I'm not just putting out one, I'm putting out many, is there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of politics. And then when we go back to what I just said there, that doesn't get discussed. That's not getting spoken about, nobody's doing anything. And that's what upsets me, to be honest. But I believe that together with our experiences, those low blood sugars you had, they're big lessons for you to actually then minimize those. This will happen from time to time, but you can learn from what goes on. And together we can learn so much more and work together to improve our cause and improve accessibility, and not just accessibility, but the approach to education as well. So that's what we've recognized at the League of Diathletes, is that whilst we do have big differences country to country in terms of health systems, we also have massive similarities. Every parent is going to react the same as each of you. And I've seen that from Fiji to Ghana to Australia to Pakistan. Every parent shares so much in common with you here in the UK as well. And it's because of this condition. And that's hope, in my opinion, because you're not alone, and you can share your experiences to work together and improve the world. In fact, I'm nobody. I didn't come from a rich background. I come from the suburbs of London, and yet look, I've got some titles. You know, I'm an honorary member of ISPAD. I'm an honorary citizen in Targu Marez, in a random place in Transylvania, and none of that should have happened in my life, but it did, because you keep working, you keep pushing, you keep going. And if you do that together, because I find there's a big individuality when you look at social media, people are often kind of branching out about themselves and whatever else. Organizations as well are trying to compete to get finances and all that baloney. But it's about just being honest, being open, and working together. So I recognize this. And so the negative experiences that I've had have encouraged this positive experience, where we've had global trainings of advocates. So this last global training was about making diabetes camps, and we're going to be doing this between 2021, 2022, both virtually for now, and hopefully face-to-face practically as well in the future, making diabetes camps around the world. Why a camp? Because that's the best environment to actually change the mental concept of this condition as well, through other people, bringing them together, having fun. Not enough camps happen in the UK, so we're going to be doing a big diabetes camp here next year. It might be virtual. We're going to try and aim it later for the year, hopefully to make it face-to-face, and 2022 onwards, absolutely, I'm optimistic. It will be face-to-face again, and making more of these youth camps, as well as young adults diabetes camps, as well as parent sessions as well, where parents, I feel, need a support system as well to happen. And we're doing this around the world. We're sharing this country to country, the same kind of concept. Some of the things I've done with your younger ones in some of the sessions, like where we learn about what hypo is by doing a squat down low. Not just doing it in the UK, we've shared this around the world, and they're all doing it to educate people in a fun environment through their local organizations around the world. So yeah, that's what the League of Diathletes is about, connecting the world as one through living with type 1. And at the bottom, that quote, which you can't quite see, is from Mahatma Gandhi. It says, the sign of a good leader is not in how many followers they have, which I think is even more something referenced today more than it was in Gandhi's time, because it's not about how many followers you have on social media or whatever. No difference is going to be generated in such a way there. It's about how many leaders you create. How many leaders you create to go and share their experiences, to go and talk to somebody else, to reach out to somebody else, to get involved in local communities and make a difference as a result. And that's kind of what we have with that League of Diathletes concept, is to bring people together. And I want to finish with not just that quote, but you can see the picture up on the right there of us in Costa Rica last year. Costa Rica, where they've got a good health system, at least, that gets everybody, nobody's going to go without in their country. So fair play, because they're not a big size country with a big budget, but they get everybody what they need. Education, again, similar, perhaps even over here, is where we need to really work. And that's what they're doing. That's Association Diavida. But we took 14 advocates on our global team to Costa Rica last year, when we could actually do that. And we trekked in the rainforest for 3 days. We shared our experiences. We had that all on film. So there are some YouTube videos. You can probably see it on the Diathlete website as well, about that, which is, there's a series, 10-minute videos. There's 5 videos to tune into, where we met the local community as well. Everybody survived. I just love that picture because that's Paula at the front, my fiance, who's also got type 1 diabetes, from Costa Rica, about to fall off a mountain. So so it makes me laugh a little bit there seeing that. But yeah, we had a great adventure. We all did it. It's not just about running marathons. We did something that was a big challenge for some of these people. Constantina, who's just behind, she's from Greece, just behind Paula. She'd never done a day's exercise in her life. She told me she had before doing the challenge, and she is actually the first person to finish. So it goes to show you, you work hard, you with your diabetes and in life in general, you'll get there. You'll get there, whatever the challenge. And I believe there's a lot more we need to get there with, referring to that last slide I showed. So yeah, that's my journey. You can follow on League of Diathletes. That's not me, that's the team. They're on social media channels. Diathlete is our charity as well, where hopefully there'll be a lot more coming next year from us as well. Now we're official registered charity, and I'll take 1 or 2 questions if there's time, if anybody's still listening to me. So
We're
Thank
all
you.
listening. I think we've got a few minutes, and we have a couple of questions actually. But amazing. I mean, I'm sure I speak for everyone. Gavin, your story is absolutely phenomenal, and really shows us that it, it, we shouldn't. Diabetes shouldn't limit our friends and family who have this. Right. One of the questions is, how do we find out about the diabetes camps? I'm sure there's a number of us who are interested.
Yeah, so follow Diathlete, and yeah, next year we'll be sharing about how to register. Obviously, we've got to follow the government advice on what the situation is, but we're aiming for the end of August because it's still summer holidays, but it's later in the year. So fingers crossed there'll be a weekend in the end of August where we'll try and put a youth camp on over a weekend at least. And yeah, so really looking forward to that. They've done it for some time in some of these other countries, so that's who we're learning from. Costa Rica, I've been to some of their camps, and it'll be a similar concept to that. So one day is the parent day. They come, I mean, the children are there as well, but we separate the parents and children a little bit. And so the parents can meet other parents. I think that's a good environment. And then through the weekend, it's a real step towards independence, I think, for the child, because they get to learn, they get to make decisions by themselves in some ways, whilst of course supported by both a medical team and an advocates team. And yeah, we did it once for the young adults in 2019 as well, and it went down really well. So yeah, fingers crossed we can make it happen again next year. If not, we'll do it virtually, and then the year after, face to face.
Fantastic. Faye has just asked, very good question, Faye. Can you connect with our local diabetes teams in any way?
Absolutely, yeah, more than happy to do that. Yeah, so Diathlete's been doing that for quite a few years with as many that we can reach. But in the past, it was just me. And now we've got a team. We've been training some advocates. We've got trustees on board. So I think we're more flexible than ever before to go and support local diabetes teams. That's exactly what we want to be doing, is partnering up with NHS teams, even if it's a virtual session for now. And yeah, getting people to share their stories, having an encouraging way to learn about set topics with diabetes.
But it sounds it's such a positive thing to mention, Diathlete. So is that something we can help by mentioning it maybe in our clinic appointments?
Absolutely, yeah. If you can, I'll happily send out any flyers or interviews that we've done that can help with clinic appointments as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. One last quick question. Do you find that all of the exercise that you do, does that help you finely tune your diabetes management, do you think? Are you more acutely aware of your body like that?
Yeah, I think yes, on both accounts. That me going out and doing sports in the first place helped me actually learn about my condition, learn about how rapidly I would go low, whether it was a run, a different type of run. 5K running is very different to a marathon running. So you kind of learn things by looking at your levels. And football as well. As I say, I always thought beforehand when I was young, oh, you're going to go low. But actually, I found I went high and low later. So I learned more about diabetes in general through getting out there, which I couldn't recommend more. And also, it goes without saying, in my opinion, that the healthier you are, that means, fitness, going for regular, and I'm a hypocrite there because at the moment in lockdown and everything, I've not been doing enough of it. But the healthier you are, the more you look after your body. And this is not just diabetes. And sure, it can count for type 1, type 2, any type of diabetes too. But in life in general, the more active lifestyle you lead and the healthier lifestyle you choose to lead, then the better long-term health you're going to get. And that's not just type 1 diabetes, that's life as a whole. And of course, when you've got type 1 diabetes, even more so. And I do think that you find more stable control. You become a bit more insulin sensitive as well. When you're a bit more active, it means you have you tend to lower the need for insulin a little bit. Well, you need insulin, but lower the amount of insulin a little bit as well over time, the more fitter you are. So yeah, you got to work with it, and you learn so much about your condition by being fit and active and out there. And also there's going to be long-term benefits for it as well.
Absolutely. Well, on that very, very positive note, thank you so much, Gavin. You're an absolute inspiration to all of us. What you've achieved is absolutely unbelievable. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.